Thanks very much, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming out today. Just before I discuss what we're here to talk about, just first of all, can I once again pass on our thoughts and regards to the people of New South Wales and Queensland who are going through some dramatic flooding events and natural disaster, which is taking lives and costing enormous amounts of money and is obviously threatening communities, particularly in the north of New South Wales and in the southeast corner of Queensland. I have written to the Prime Minister and communicated with him more directly to offer whatever support Western Australia can during this difficult time. Secondly, once again, to all the people of the Ukraine, to all the West Australians with That was actually a bike. Okay. Anyway, to all the people of the Ukraine and to the families in Western Australia with relatives in Ukraine, our thoughts are with you as well. And once again, I've written to the Prime Minister to offer our support in whatever way we can, whether it's in assistance with refugees, whether it's anything we can offer to ensure that we do our bit to assist the Commonwealth effort in regards to that terrible crisis unfolding in Europe. We're here today on the South Perth foreshore with one of WA's world-class tourism operators, providing an exhilarating experience for visitors to Western Australia and West Australians alike. Swan River Seaplanes takes travellers from Perth to Rottnest or Margaret River via a state-of-the-art seaplane while showcasing incredible views of the city and Western Australia's magnificent coastline. I'd like to thank them for joining us today, and I think Christy from Swan River Seaplanes will say something to you shortly. Now, to a COVID update, I can confirm to 8 p.m. last night, Western Australia recorded a total of 2,423 new cases. Of these, 2,420 are local cases, 3 are travel-related cases. I don't have the latest figures on PCR tests, but I understand that clinics are quite busy. Today's cases include 843 self-reported positive rat cases, so the rat testing system is working effectively. It is encouraging to see the rise in testing numbers, especially when you consider we don't know how many rats there are that are negative, but I suspect it's many thousands. WA now has 8,419 total active cases. There are 22 people now in hospital. This includes 6 new COVID patients compared to the 16 that were reported yesterday. Tragically, I can report one person has passed away from COVID overnight. Today is a big day for Western Australia and the nation. A day we enter a new era of the pandemic. This morning, Western Australia's border controls came to an end. By only allowing travel with COVID-free jurisdictions for the last 2 years, Western Australia achieved some incredible outcomes during one of the most challenging periods of modern world history. Western Australians live lives that were unimaginable in other parts of the world, largely free from the devastation inflicted by COVID-19, especially on the elderly and the immunocompromised. We avoided needless deaths. With Omicron, of course, the situation changed and became more difficult. And as of last night, the hard border controls have come to an end. We expect around 27,000 people will arrive in Western Australia over the coming week or so. Triple vaccinated if eligible, and they'll need to take a rapid antigen test as well. This is a big day for a lot of West Australians. We expect we'll see a lot of big hugs and happy tears, which is going to be great to see. Today is a big step forward for Western Australia, a new chapter in the story that we've all had to endure together over the past 2 years. While the next few weeks will contain the toughest challenge we have faced as we deal with our own Omicron COVID wave, better times are obviously ahead. It's important that we are prepared for them now to capitalise on the months to come, as more West Australians travel abroad for their holidays. We need to do what we can to balance that with interstate and international visitors into Western Australia. At the end of last year, I announced the Reconnect WA package. That was a $175 million comprehensive package to ensure WA businesses had a competitive edge when it came to our safe transition. A multi-million-dollar plan to invest in flight attraction, destination marketing, as well as our own international education market. Today, in line with the reopening of WA's borders to the rest of the nation, we are announcing the launch of one of the components of that package, a $12 million Wander Out Yonder marketing blitz around the nation. to encourage interstate travellers to holiday in Western Australia. I'll let the Tourism Minister, Roger Cook, talk through the details with you. But as we all know, especially as West Australians have rediscovered their own state, especially our regions over the last 2 years, Western Australia has something incredible to offer to the world. Experiences that can't be found anywhere else. And one of the strongest, safest places to holiday in the world right now, with one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. We have an amazing story to tell, and we need to tell it loudly, proudly, and positively to Australia and the rest of the world, and we can do that together through this campaign and other campaigns we'll launch. I'll take questions shortly, but I'll now hand over to the Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Premier. Look, this is a good day for WA, but let us just keep in our thoughts people of Queensland and New South Wales, and of course in the Ukraine today, where they are all doing it obviously really tough. And today marks a new beginning for Western Australia. And as we stand here on Whadjuk land of the great Noongar Nation in South Perth, we can look back on just how far we've come in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic in Western Australia. 2 years ago, we didn't know what we were facing, and today we open our borders and embrace a new chapter for Western Australia. And I want to thank everyone who have all done their bit, everyone playing their part in making sure that we continue to manage this pandemic as well as we can. We've had an outstanding result, and all West Australians have made that difference. So thank you very much to everyone. And today we, as I said, welcome a new chapter. Today we look ahead with optimism, restless ambition, and with confidence and pride in what we can do together. Western Australians have spent the last 2 years rediscovering our state with a sense of wonder. The Kimberley, the Pilbara, the Coral Coast, the Goldfields, the Great Southern, and of course the Southwest. We really embraced Wander Out Yonder, and with absolute gusto. And today we turn to the rest of Australia and invite them to come and see Western Australia. It's their turn to wander out yonder. We want people to come here and experience the extraordinary environment we have in Western Australia, the authentic experiences that they can have as tourists, and above all else, to really embrace our extraordinary country and sky, which is told through the wisdom and the great storytelling of our First Nations people. Yesterday I announced a $4 million contract with the WA Indigenous Tourism Operators Council, which is about continuing to develop our Indigenous tourism product, because I want people to learn how to connect to land and sky through the wisdom and storytelling of our First Nations people. I want Indigenous tourism to be the heartbeat of our tourism strategy. And today we also get to showcase operators like Christie and Swan River Seaplanes, and just emphasise what an important role they play to really growing our tourism product. They brought a new plane, a huge investment, which will begin flying above Perth next week. We want passionate operators prepared to make an investment, in their case a Cessna seaplane, to give tourists an unforgettable experience of our city, Rottnest Island and Margaret River. Get ready to see Swan River seaplanes in the sky next week. And for Christie to be successful, we need interstate and international tourists. And that's why we are taking the phenomenally successful Wander Out Yonder campaign to the East Coast. Tomorrow, Tourism WA's highly successful Wander Out Yonder campaign will kick off in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, as part of a whole suite of marketing initiatives designed to entice holidaymakers from the East Coast to come to Western Australia and to explore what our beautiful state has to offer. The WA Tourism Initiative is funded by the state government's Reconnect WA package, and will see unique scenes from Western Australia plastered all over billboards, social media, newspapers and magazines, broadcast across television, radio advertising from March through to July this year. West Australian icons like quokkas, whale sharks and cable beach style camel trains will pop up in unexpected locations across the East Coast to highlight to interstate travellers the incredible experiences that they can have in our state. The suite of marketing initiatives will encourage travellers to holiday here and wander out yonder in Western Australia, exploring our stunning coastlines, our premium food and wine, our exceptional art and culture, and WA's unique Aboriginal history. The $12 million package will also include partnerships with airlines and retail travel brands to offer Perth and statewide flight sales, travel itineraries and packages to help drive bookings to WA. And this is just the first of many initiatives funded by Reconnect WA to entice interstate and overseas visitors back to our beautiful state. The package also includes a $65 million aviation fund to re-establish international and interstate flight routes and bolster WA's role as the Western Gateway. To give you an idea of the scale of this exercise, this aviation fund is already hard at work. Perth will again soon be directly reconnected with all major capitals, with 74,000 seats to be flown in and out of Perth across international and domestic services in our first week of opening alone. This will only continue to grow as more airlines return to service and rescale their operations. As the Premier said, we are now entering a really interesting and exciting new chapter for WA, and through Reconnect WA, the state government is proud to support our world-class tourism industry and welcome back visitors from around the country and across the world. 4,000 people are coming from interstate today, with another 1,000 from overseas, and we have processed over 25,000 G2G passes for people travelling here in the coming days and weeks. So this is an important time, a time where we can continue to grow our tourism product and make sure we give everyone the opportunity to wander out yonder and really experience the great tourism offerings that Western Australia has to offer. Thank you. Did you want to take questions, Premier, or hear from Christy?
Christy, and then you'll take
Christy?
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for coming down today on what is a truly amazing day for tourism, to have borders reopened. We're launching for the first time, or relaunching. We've landed in the Swan for the first time in 2 years. So it's a pretty significant day for us as well, and we look forward to sharing our state with interstate and international visitors. By way of seaplane, of course, straight from the Swan River to Margaret River, Rottnest Island, and even further to the Abrolhos and beyond. So thank you again, and yeah, go tourism.
Any questions for Christy? How many bookings have you got at the moment from over east?
We do have quite a few bookings for over east, not in the next coming weeks, but we're sort of seeing it come through, in the subsequent weeks after that. So we think people might hold off a little bit, and then I think they'll come. I think visiting friends and relatives will be first through the gates, and then we'll see sort of more tourists.
How important is your market in terms of the east as opposed to West Australia who's doing this?
We've got a good mix of both, so we offer some amazing products for locals, scenic flights, picnics on the Swan combined with scenic flights, but then a lot further afield as well. So yeah, we have a good mix of interstate, international and local visitors generally.
The Minister mentioned that you bought a new plane.
We did.
Was that in the middle of the pandemic, or was it recently?
Recently, yeah. So we, about 3 months ago, we started negotiations to buy the plane. It arrived in Australia about 2 weeks ago, and in WA 2 days ago. So this morning was the very first landing on the Swan for this aircraft, and our first in 2 years since COVID first hit.
Do you have confidence that people will come back and want to do this kind of activity?
We are. There's a lot of support for tourism at the moment. WA is an amazing state, and I think we've sat it out a little bit, played it right, and we're ready to open. We're certainly heavily invested in tourism, obviously.
Any questions for the Minister?
Yep.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
So at 2,400 cases today, WA's probably got about the highest number of cases per capita anywhere in the country.
Yep.
Obviously the harshest restrictions in the country starting today as well. It's going to be a tough sell to convince tourists to come to WA at the moment, isn't it?
Well, look, I think it's important to have a sense of perspective in relation to what lives are like in Western Australia compared to the rest of the world and indeed the rest of Australia at the moment. In other states, they still have restrictions. They still have endured significant periods of lockdown, which we have not in Western Australia. People have been watching the way we've been managing the COVID pandemic as a community, and I think and we know from our research that there's a lot of pent-up demand for people wanting to come to Western Australia because they see it as a safe place and they see it as a vibrant place. Now, obviously, over the next few weeks, we're going to see a significant increase in the number of cases, and that's going to be a period which will challenge our community. But like all the challenges that we've faced to date, West Australians have been up for that challenge, and we know we'll get through this. And this is obviously an important part of starting to grow our tourism industry again. Look, this won't happen overnight. Bringing back tourists, bringing back all our tourism operators, building that resilience and confidence in the industry will take time, and we'll grow our visitor numbers over a period. But look, we're already seeing the flights come back around about 40% of pre-COVID levels. So we know that we're going to be able to get back to new normal as quickly as possible.
What do you say to people interstate who are skittish about coming because we've had a false start with the border?
Look, we obviously took the decision to delay the border opening because Omicron came along and threw us a curveball. But we've now got an idea of how to manage that, and we're managing it very well. I think people are still looking to Western Australia as a piece of excellence in terms of how to manage the COVID pandemic. I think they're looking to Western Australia and saying that things are still safe and the economy is strong. And from that reason, we know that there's a lot of demand to come to this great state to experience all we have to offer.
Why would eastern staters come over here when masks are enforced, big outdoor events can't happen over 500 people, whereas over there that's what's occurring?
Well, because they can see Western Australia transitioning from a period of time where we've had no COVID to now managing the outbreak, and they will see over the coming weeks how we continue to manage the peak of the outbreak in the coming weeks. They're looking at us and still saying, look, they've got outbreak of the disease, they've still got a great environment, they're still wandering out yonder, they're still going out and exploring their great state. We want to come to Western Australia and explore that great state too.
Was it a missed opportunity not to build up this border opening with a campaign, a tourism campaign in coming, over the weeks leading up?
Yeah, look, we've already been in market to build that latent or that pent-up demand, and to continue to make sure that when the borders do fully open in the context of flights and travel infrastructure, that demand is there. But what we want to see that is now significantly ramp up that campaign, a $12 million campaign across all forms of media on the East Coast, to really let people know that Western Australia is a great place to come and wander out yonder and to experience all we have to offer.
Do they start today?
This campaign will run from March through to July. It's an initial campaign to really just build in that level of awareness and of that destination marketing can provide. And as I said, there'll be other marketing initiatives that we are working with travel brands and with the airlines to really make sure we can continue to build that level of demand and give people an opportunity to come to Western Australia.
Minister, will you wait until after the peak in cases to really ramp up that campaign? Do you risk squandering some of that spending if you roll it out all now?
Well, look, I don't think so. I think any advertising we do now will pay dividends for us in the short to medium term, and the advertising spend is locked in, and we know that already people are keen to come over here. Western Australians haven't endured the same level of lockdowns as we've seen in the other states, so they're looking at us with a great deal of excitement and envy. I think they want to come here and experience it. They'd say if this is the worst it gets, when you look out on such a beautiful day like today, they see people experiencing this great environment and all that we have to offer, well, then they say that's a pretty great opportunity to travel.
What's been the feedback from tourism operators on this kind of advertising campaign? Have they said, yeah, this is adequate, this will help us get back? Or?
Well, we know anecdotally and from research that the Wander Out Yonder campaign is very successful. But we have to be realistic that to continue to build and bring our tourism industry back fully, this is going to take a longer period of time with a more concerted effort. I think tourism operators who have been doing it tough. You've all heard about hospitality and regional accommodation doing really well. But CBD accommodation and obviously tourism operators have really struggled over the last couple of years. So we're going to have to continue to support the industry, make sure that we build their confidence, build their customer base, and continue to make sure that we can stimulate the demand, which will continue to grow the industry into the future.
In December, a new slogan was launched for WA. I think it was "It's like no other." Has that now been scrapped in favour of Wander Out Yonder?
No, the It's Like No Other campaign is part of the broader branding for Western Australia during this transition period. Wander Out Yonder has been Wander Out Yonder has been part of our tourism marketing branding and will continue to do so. We know from research and anecdotally that Wander Out Yonder is a very effective message and piece of market branding, and we're going to take that message out into the East Coast now. And we'll continue to look at all the opportunities in the future about how we continue to refresh that brand and really make sure that we highlight the importance that Western Australia can offer in terms of tourism, the authenticity of that experience, the great environment, the deep cultural roots that we have through our Indigenous people, and making sure that they can really experience the great food, art and culture of Western Australia.
Do you think there's been a bit of hostility from eastern staters given that WA's locked them out for so long?
Oh, look, there's a bit of chatter around that, some of that sort of stuff, but we know that people on the East Coast are desperate to come over to visit Western Australia, whether it's visiting relatives or come over and experience our great tourism product. You saw the caravans queued up at Eucla last night. You saw people coming in last night and throughout today. Many people coming to visit relatives and taking the opportunity to travel around while they're here. Many people simply coming to Western Australia because they want to come and experience this great state. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Any questions?
Did you think this day would come? How does it feel?
Oh, well, yes, of course. We always said the whole way along it would come, but we wanted to do it in the safest possible way. So we waited till we got to very high third dose vaccination levels, very safe and secure community, and I think now's about the right time. The other thing is we didn't want to deliberately infect our state. I just didn't want to do that. So we haven't done that. Unfortunately, Omicron got in. We suppressed the spread of it for a considerable period of time, but now it's growing pretty rapidly. But the good thing is we're at 65.3% third dose vaccination levels, one of the highest rates in Australia, and I think one of the highest rates in the world, and that climbs by about 1% a day. So we're getting our people as safe as possible to go through what will be a pretty tricky and difficult period, but I'm very confident we'll get through it.
Do you have the
guarantee that the border won't go back up?
Oh, we don't have any intention whatsoever of putting back in place a border, but the border has worked. Just want you all to know the border has worked. We've had now, unfortunately, 3 people pass away from COVID. Other parts of the world have had millions. Other parts of Australia have had thousands. We've had the strongest economic outcomes pretty much in history. And I released the figures to you yesterday. Our state final demand was over 7% increase during the COVID period. So other states have been in recession. Our economy has grown strongly. So by keeping COVID out, by having great health outcomes, you've got great economic outcomes, wonderful employment figures, huge activity both in the city and the regions, strongest economy in Australia, and we've managed to have a great set of finances, which means we can invest in important programs like tourism programs, international students, airline attraction, all those sorts of things, because we have stronger financial capacity than other states.
So when you say you've got no intention, is that a guarantee?
I think that's the same guy. So you all think just odd things happen in Rockingham, they don't. Sorry, Jacqueline, what was your question?
You mentioned it's your intention not to bring the border back up. Is that a guarantee it won't?
Oh, you can never guarantee these things. Obviously, if another strain comes along that is deadly, or a different illness comes along or something of that nature, no government can guarantee that. And I'll just remind you all, the Commonwealth Government put in place a border around Australia as well. And every state in Australia actually at one point in time or another had borders in place. So it's just something that's there to protect your citizens if necessary.
Was that extra month worth it from February 5?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Was that extra month from February 5 worth the delay?
Absolutely. So when we announced the delay, which has been slightly less than a month, we're at around 25% third dose. Now we're over 65% third dose now, and that means that we've protected the health and the well-being of West Australians far more than otherwise. You've got to recall, back in January, Omicron was running wild in the east. Hospitals were basically overflowing. They had what's called a code red in their emergency departments in Victoria, code amber in their emergency departments in New South Wales. They had up to 100 people a day dying in the eastern states. To have deliberately opened the border in that scenario would have been a catastrophe. So we avoided that. And I realise it caused some consternation and some people had their plans disrupted. But on the other hand, we did actually allow for people to come in subject to a week's quarantine, and we had way more than 30,000 people take advantage of that. It didn't enhance the spread of the virus here. It allowed people to reunite safely. But now we're at a point, the virus is here already. We have very high levels of vaccination. It's the right time to open up.
Do you know the age and vaccination status of the person who died?
No, I don't.
Any underlying issues?
I don't know. I just got told that one person, I understand the person was in the Great Southern.
And do you know if they died from COVID?
I don't know.
Why weren't outdoor festivals and events given the same opportunity as, say, football stadiums or the stadium to have events over 500 if they're seated, have QR codes, marshals and that type of thing?
Look, it's all based on health advice. I've answered this question 3 times now. But it's all based on health advice. And the health advice is that some events have more mixing and less capacity to control the movement of people than other events. So we have to draw lines, and we drew the line around that based upon health advice.
But if something can be controlled, why couldn't there be some sort of discussion with these event organisers to make it work?
Look, the good thing is, hopefully this will only be for a month. I understand there's some difficulties. We've got compensation packages in place to assist with those businesses that are affected. But you have to draw lines when you're dealing with COVID in order to protect the community, and that's what we've done.
Premier, Anthony Albanese flew in overnight and he said he's here to see the people of Western Australia and visit you. Why did you schedule this press conference to run at the same time as he was holding one on the other side of town? And why didn't you appear publicly with Anthony Albanese during your campaign for the state election?
Okay, that's a big set of questions going back in time. So I'll be meeting with Anthony later on today. Obviously, I don't know when he's scheduling his media conferences. I'm not up with that, so didn't even know he's holding a media conference at this point in time. But I'll be catching up with him later on today. During the election campaign, I did the same. Met with Anthony. It was a state election. You might recall the Prime Minister didn't come at all, didn't meet with the Liberal Party at all, neither did the National Party leadership, so we certainly had more involvement with our federal colleagues than they did. So look, it's just, I'll meet with him and do events with him in the future.
Will you be doing any media appearances while
Today?
Anthony Albanese is in Perth?
No.
Why not?
Well, look, I'm meeting with him later today. Obviously, I have travel arrangements that I have to deal with as well that have been forced upon me by Mr. Palmer. So there's the sorts of things I now have to confront.
When are you travelling to Sydney?
Yeah, look, soon, but obviously I won't go into exact travel arrangements for security reasons.
So you're going, I think you appear on the 7th, so you're going a bit early and you get a chance to catch up with family?
Yes, that's right.
One thing that the ABC's heard from some voters is they don't really know who Anthony Albanese is. How would you describe who he is to those people?
Well, he's been in Parliament for 25 years. He's a fundamentally decent person. He's come from humble origins and climbed to do great things. He has a great vision for Australia. He has a very mainstream centrist view of the world. He wants to make sure that everyone shares in the success of the country, which is what he has devoted his life to. I actually think he's quite well known. He's been in Parliament significantly longer than the Prime Minister. He served in serious and senior ministerial positions during his time in Parliament. He's very likeable, very capable, very decent, very hard-working, very committed. I actually think he's a very suitable person to hold high office.
Why would he be more suitable than Scott Morrison?
Okay, all right. Interesting questions. Well, obviously, I'm a member of the Labor Party, so we support our own side, and I've been a supporter and friend of Anthony for at least 15 years.
The new visitor guidelines for hospitals are 14 pages long. How's anyone at home meant to understand that and get through that?
Look, the hospitals will implement the rules in accordance with what we announced, and I think they're reasonably straightforward as to who can visit. So there's sometimes various exemptions for compassionate reasons and the like, which hospitals will implement. But hopefully this is only for a month. It's designed to protect patients in hospital who are very, very vulnerable. That's what it's about. Our hospitals have a lot of people in there who are, 1, elderly, or 2, immunocompromised, or 3, they've had serious surgery that basically is life-threatening. So if those people get COVID, it actually makes their situation immeasurably worse. So we're just trying to protect the health and well-being of patients in hospital.
Do you acknowledge
Last
the look,
question,
though,
thanks.
that we're welcoming tourists into WA, but we're actually shutting loved ones out from seeing their family members in hospital?
I'll just repeat again. We're trying to save the lives of people who are patients in hospitals by these measures. And hopefully the measures themselves will only be in place for a month. But as you know, parents and spouses and people for compassionate grounds can actually visit family members subject to some restrictions around rat testing and mask wearing and the like. We're trying to get the right balance. This is what other states have done. This is what other countries have done. If we don't do this, and people get COVID and die in hospitals, well then people will say, rightfully, why didn't you put rules in?
On a lighter note, will you be buying the McGowan sofa bed?
I did see that. Well, you'd think they'd give me one as a sort of a promotional opportunity, wouldn't you? It was actually quite a funny ad, I thought. But it's, it's one of those strange and bizarre things. Cereal, boxes, T-shirts, jumpers, sofa beds. I don't know. The last 2 years has been really quite surreal. I just want to point one other thing out to you before I go, just so you all know. And I think these are relevant facts. Since the start of May in 2020, Western Australia has had 12 days of lockdown. Over that period, Victoria's had around 200 days of lockdown. New South Wales has had 140 days of lockdown over the same period. So in other words, they've had many multiples of full lockdowns compared to Western Australia. So we've had a very different experience to those states. Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania have also had various periods of time, but comparable states, if you like, big states, New South Wales and Victoria, 200 days in Victoria and 140 in New South Wales. So very, very difficult experience for them. And the other thing I just wanted to point out about the border arrangement, just so you all know, over the last 2 years, since April when we put it in 2020, we've actually been open to a lot of states over that period of time, based upon the fact as to whether they were COVID-free or not. So over the course of the last 2 years, we've actually been open for quarantine-free travel to New South Wales for 132 days, to Victoria for 115 days, to Queensland for 239 days, Tasmania 415 days. I don't have the South Australian figures, but it'd be similar to South Australia. So in other words, the measures we put in place, whilst at times difficult and harsh, were in place for a period of time, not for the whole time. And people could actually travel between all the states of Australia at various points in time and Western Australia quarantine-free. So we put in place measures that were tough and difficult, but they weren't always in place. And people could travel to New South Wales or Victoria, South Australia, Queensland, Tasmania, Northern Territory, ACT, at various points in time over the course of the last 2 years. But when those jurisdictions got community spread of COVID, we shut down to them. And that actually protected us. That saved lots of lives, saved lots of jobs. It saved people getting sick. It saved our ICUs getting lots of people into them. Now, we're about to go through the Omicron wave, but we are going into it with the highest vaccination levels in Australia, some of the highest vaccination levels in the world, with a well-prepared workforce, with very strong supplies of rats and a community that is compliant and ready for what it will be a difficult month.
You gave the eastern states there was some strong words used, those who criticised the border at the time. Are you asking for their forgiveness now and come and visit us here?
I wouldn't put it that way. We're actually doing major advertising campaigns to attract tourists, and the good thing is we have the financial capacity to do it. So Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, the other states are all in deficit with rapidly climbing debt. Western Australia is in surplus with debt going down. Only jurisdiction in Australia. That means we can invest in things like tourism campaigns, marketing campaigns, international student campaigns. Thank you.